I'm gonna play Gormenghast here. This is one that I got as a gift. I don't remember quite the circumstances around it. I was very excited to get it. I don't remember if this was someone. I have the feeling that it was something that I got off an auction, but it may have been it may have either been one of those auctions where you can order something for free and just pay shipping, or it may have been something that was sent along with an auction, or it may have been something that was sent by a viewer, or it could have been a combination of those. Why? Well, I read the Peak books. Well, the first one I read was actually Titus Alone, which is the third book in the series, and is kind of significantly different from the other two. And I really did like it. There's something to a ponderous but almost non-prose style of writing that permeates the book. And I can show you an example of that. I read this one. Each of these cards for the players comes with a description, or for the characters. These are not the players. These are characters you're controlling. I'll explain the game a little better in a bit, but Dr. Pruneswaller, with his hyena laugh, his bizarre and elegant body, his celluloid face. His main defects: the insufferable pitch of his voice, his maddening laughter, and his affected gestures. His cardinal virtue: an undamaged brain. So that gives you kind of an idea of the type of writing. It almost flows over you and around you, and I know that I had difficulty discerning the story out from the writing. In some ways it reminds me a little of Dickens, or even to some extent of Lovecraft, but anyway. I enjoyed it. Unlike Lovecraft, I felt there was music or Dickens for that matter. There was some music to the writing that was pleasant. But I enjoy my Dickens too, just for that flow, without really trying to distill the key points of the story. Well, after I read that third one, I vaguely had it on lookout, and when my ex-wife and I found copies of the first two books in a bookstore, if I recall correctly, we picked them up, and I read those as well. And then recently, after deciding, after picking this up, etc., something had been on my mind for a while. I knew there was a movie of it. It was actually a mini-series on BBC. And I hunted that down and watched it. And I was a little confused by that because, first of all, the characters seemed even more caricaturish than... In the book, they definitely had a caricaturish nature. And you could go many different ways with that. But in the movie or miniseries, they came across as very much so. Once you kind of got rid of that, well, what was kind of interesting was seeing more of the story being distilled for me, because that writing wasn't there anymore. Although there was a visual and sonic overload of the same nature, which is kind of an interesting thing. And some of that is these characterizations. The drawings from here are, I think, inspired by the movie. They look very close to it. And I'm not sure you would come across with these same... I don't think the character descriptions in the book were explicitly aligned enough for that to be what you would see them as. But I don't really remember. It's been many years since I've read it. And my initial feeling with the miniseries was, oh my God, what have they done? But as I watched more and more of it, I became more drawn into it, and it was enjoyable in its own way. And I think was faithful enough from what I could tell. The problem that I had was I remember things from the third book and things from the first book. I barely remember the second book, so the sort of second half, the miniseries covers the first two books, the ones actually in Gormenghast. Anyway, let's take us a lot of time getting to where we're going. Because I liked the story so much, I wanted to try to give a shot to the game. And it's a fairly simple game. Let's go over the pieces, what we have. So, it's a geomorphic board that the players build at the beginning of the game without really knowing much about what's going to happen, in terms that they don't have their cards yet. So, and they don't have any idea of particular strategy or whatever. So what kind of grows out of it? This piece is put down first, and then players have to build off of it, and they have to maintain all the connections. And that's not really explicitly, it said the connections have to match. That's not explicitly described. I know that there are 3 types of flooring in the game. Stone, marble, and wood. Very clearly, there's no transitions on any of these, so that can't be what they mean by match. But we'll see. The rules are very sparse, and you kind of have to... There isn't much to the game, though, so it shouldn't be too hard to figure them out. So that's one thing. There's a deck of additional cards because you might go exploring about and extending the castle. This is sort of the known floor plan at the beginning of the game. You have a number of these character cards. The cards are used to hold these little influence chits that each player is going to have. And then the little token is used to move them around on the map. The players are going to be competing for control of characters to have those characters complete certain goals, plots that they have in mind. Now, the conceit of the game is that each of the players is essentially a wannabe steerpike, if you're familiar with the story, who's basically this schemer who has many, many evil plots to enhance his own position in the castle. And what you're going to be able to do is moving the characters around, grabbing items in a sort of a clue-like fashion, except you don't call the items to yourself, to get somebody to the right room with the right thing, and then you can trigger some victory points. Excuse me. What else do you have? You have a couple of decks of cards. The red one are the plot cards. These are going to be your goals that you're going to try to trigger to get victory points. These are your victory point markers. And then these are action cards. Those are what are going to allow you to move pieces, to get influence on pieces, or to trigger certain events in the game. There's another way to trigger events, which may come from the plot cards, I don't remember precisely, which is the Book of Rituals. When a ritual is required, you'll roll this big 30-sider, and you cause a ritual to happen. And we'll see the specifics of the cards. The version I had came with this nice little laminated information sheet. I don't want to see this because I like to be surprised by things. And I really don't feel like this is the kind of game where over-analysis of the design of the hidden features is a good idea. I don't think this is a tremendous strategy game. I think this is more of a, let's come up with something simple that kind of works, gives you the flavor, and allows you to play in the universe without, too much effort. So, let's hit the rules themselves. I've already taken the liberty. I dealt out 4 players' hands worth of cards and started setting up the tiles. And, well, I set up the tiles that are to be set up. And I kind of wish I had waited because it was a neat maneuver that I like the thinking that I do during that, which is a player will be looking at their tiles. And one, they're going to try to set it up so that they don't end up having to stick some tile off in a stupid location necessarily, although that can be fine. But another is to try to align things so that they go together. So, you know, if you have the common room and the kitchen in your hand, you're thinking, well, I might want to put those near each other, but then somebody bones you by putting the library off that, and you can't stick the kitchen, you know, you could put it off on the hollow halls or something. So that kind of thinking was kind of fun, you know, and I wish I had caught that. That may be the most fun that I have in the game. The next thing that happens, and here's one of the places where the rules are kind of sketchy again, is you got this pile of artifact tokens, and then each player in turn places one artifact token face down on each castle tile. Well, that's not exactly a very good description. That sounds like each player's placing... so if there are 4 players, there'll be 4 tokens on each tile. I don't think that's what's intended. Normally when you draw a new tile, you get a token immediately. So I think what is intended is to just place them like this, face down, and then they're going to be face up and resolved. And we'll take care of that in a moment. I'll just move these up. But some of them are going to bring characters into play. Some of them represent artifacts that can be used in the plots. And some of them are blanks that'll just get thrown back in the box. Place them all. Let's take a look at what we got. So this one is an antique sword in the Hall of Bright Carvings, whatever. This one is Swelter. Okay, well that means I find Chef Swelter and I put him here in the Hall of Cobwebs. And then we got another thing here. A hot water bottle in the observatory. Why? And here's a blank in the Room of Roots that gets pulled out immediately. And I'll continue with the rest of those. This makes things somewhat unsatisfying because people are in places where maybe you wouldn't expect them to be. That's not so terrible. People move around. But so are items. For example, there's a pony in the schoolroom. I don't really like that. There's an antique sword in the Hall of Bright Carvings, and the bright carving is over here in the hollow halls. What's it doing there? Well, I mean, sure, some things might end up out of place, but there's a lot of things that are just not in reasonable places for them. Book of poetry lying outside in the pavilion. Okay, sure. But anyway, it is somewhat disturbing. So let's go on with what else happens. Each player is going to get 5 action cards and 2 plot cards and their influence tokens. Now I had better choose my order of play. Let's put blue. I think there's a yellow piece missing but was made. Again, I mean, I got it for free, so. Red, yellow, green. And I'm going to note those down somewhere and deal out the cards. Now let's hit the actual rules. And I think this is going to be a quick hit, but it may actually be a weird one where it's like in 2 parts or something. I don't know. Of course, it depends, because I have no idea how long my videos are anymore. All right, so the plot cards, let's take a peek at a couple of these. So these tell you some story, and they highlight the information down here as well as in red here. If you just want to play this as a game without reading through it all, and it's not like it's terribly exciting to read this stuff, but it helps you understand the plot. You need to get Irma Prunesqualler in the common room. That's worth a victory point if you can manage that. If you have the Book of Sonian Poetry, which is also in the game currently, and that's a big deal. Remember, not all these chits are in there, and not all the rooms exist yet. So this is kind of impressive. All 3 of these things are on the board already. So that's a plot that could be completed with the current board situation. Oh, you win the game when you get 9 victory points, and you get 1 for completing a plot, getting a person into the right room, and 3 for completing a plot with the right item, fully completing the plot. Okay. In addition, you have these cards. So what does this mean up here? That is a number of spaces that you can move one character that you control. Again, just flavor information. And this is an interrupt. It can stop a player from placing any influence tokens on a character this round. So as they're playing, interrupt is not explicitly defined here, but people get used to that from Magic or whatever. Hey, I can do this as you declare your action, basically. This one has a different type. It has an influence icon. So instead of doing movement, I could spend to put an influence on one of the characters, and that means putting one of my markers on there. I believe I'm also allowed to remove influence. Let me see how this works. It may be effectively the same thing. To move a character, you have to control them. The influence characters indicate that you control a character. You can also use them to remove players' control of a character. When you play a card, you can choose to move a number of your influence tokens equal to the value of the top left of the influence icon. If you want to control a character, you have to have tokens on that character card. These come from your influence token pool. You can move a number of influence tokens equal to the value in the influence icon. You need at least 1 influence token to control them. You can't have more than 3 on a card. A character is never guaranteed, though, because wait, you cannot place more than 3 on a character card. I don't know what that means. Note that control of a character is never guaranteed, as opponents can always exceed your maximum 3 influence. Okay, so far we're not there. Only 1 player at a time can control a character. I'm not sure how to read that. What it doesn't say, so I'm not sure that it's the person with the most, in which case what's with that a player can exceed, or if you have to have more than everyone else. It's not really defined, and again, you know, there aren't a lot of rules in this game, but what there aren't well written. Removing control of another character, if someone else has influence over a character, you can weaken that control by using your tokens. Place 1 or more of your tokens on the controlled character card. Each token you place on a card removes 1 of the controlling player's tokens. It also removes 1 of yours. Again, I don't know what they're talking about. Like, I don't know what this limit of you cannot place more than 3 on a character card. I think that means you can have 3 stable on the card, but somebody can remove them. And I think only 1 person's tokens are on the card, which takes away some of the possible strategy choices that would be available. We'll keep going, but place 1 or more of your tokens here. If when you have removed all your and your opponent's influence tokens, you still have 1 or more tokens on the character card, you take control of the character. So I think what this is stating is you can put up to 3 tokens on a card. You can have up to 3 tokens on a card at the end, but you can place as many as you like, and only 1 person can have tokens on the card. What I had hoped was something a little different, where your pool of tokens, so there's a difference between, say, 2 people having 1 token each on a card and nobody having a token on the card. The 2 people having 1 token each could have reflected that that they have an advantage towards controlling that character. But if placing a token just eliminates another player's token no matter what, which is what this seems to imply, then there isn't that kind of strategic decision, because you have a limited number of tokens, so it might be useful to have partial influence over someone, but someone else can keep you from getting control of that character. It just strikes me as a richer choice to go in that direction. But that does not seem to be what they're writing. Okay, movement. Like we saw here, some of the cards have a movement icon. That allows you to move any character you control from one castle tile to another via an exit. You cannot split it between characters. You must complete all moves before another card is played. If you exit a castle tile through an exit that has no adjoining tile, you draw another castle tile and put it in play with an artifact token. And unlike setup, the only exit that needs to match is the one that the character has just passed through. So we don't actually have to... it's a random tile, so you don't have to hook it up so that it works in conjunction with the other tiles. Now, you might want to give your character an escape, but you might be trying to bury a character or something. Picking up artifacts, this uses up one move. When you're in the same location as an artifact, you can pick it up and put it on the character card. Each character can only carry one artifact. It costs nothing to drop an artifact. It just drops into the character's current location. Always pay attention to the text effects on cards. They can prove invaluable. Okay, so for example, here there's draw and place 2 plot cards into your hand. So I could play this card to get 2 of these type of cards, and different type of card. Okay. Some cards have interrupt. Those are going to be hard for me to remember. And they are actually defined here. There are also ritual cards. In the action deck, there are 12 of them, each with the ritual symbol on them, which looks like that. I don't know if we have an example. There's one. Yes, a couple of them. And they're pretty specific here. These cards cannot be discarded and will slowly fill up your hand if not played. When a ritual is played, you roll the ritual die and consult the Book of Rituals and follow whatever instructions are specified in there. So they're kind of bones, and you may want to get them out of your hand. When you no longer want to perform more actions or can't, you draw 3 cards in any combination of action and plot cards. However, you can't have more than 7 cards total in your hand and have to discard non-ritual cards in the appropriate discard pile. And the game ends when somebody gets 9 victory points. Alright, I'll take a little break and then we'll start actually playing. Honestly, I think the amount of time I'm going to spend videoing this is going to be larger than most games, because the whole game is about making these decisions on the cards. So I think I'm going to load this sucker up as a standalone intro, because I think this is going to take, the whole game is not supposed to take more than like 45 minutes or so. It's a very light type of game. One that I almost would say doesn't look very Euro-ish. Yeah, I'm sure it gets called that, but I wouldn't even call this. This feels like something very different. It doesn't feel like the kind of decision making that I would call a Euro type game. So yeah, I think I'm going to load this up simply because the amount of detail that I'm going to spend playing it. Probably should have done the same with things like In a Pickle, but that really is like a 10-minute game. This is probably going to take about an hour, which means while I'm videoing it, it'll probably take about 2 hours of video. So, one reason that I haven't been putting anything up for a while is that with the holidays and everything, it seemed like a decent time to get myself in. First of all, I finished up one of the video games I was playing, Tower of Time, that I had kind of put on a back burner for a while. And then I threw myself into one of these, kind of really immersive role-playing type things, Vampire. And I'm almost done with it, so I'm like, shit, I should have finished this a couple of days ago. But, whatever, I'm taking my time to enjoy it. And cheating like mad, too, but that's just me. All right, let's send this up.